Let's begin from the US. The Signal Group chart on America's strikes on Yemen's Houthis is making headlines for an unprecedented intel lapse after a journalist was mistakenly added to the group. But there is another story emerging from the saga after the Atlantic magazine published screenshots of the group chart. A short while back, the Atlantic said they are posting the charts after statements from senior leaders and intel chiefs who all said in unison that there was no classified information in the chart. The magazine declared it is releasing the chart group communication in public interest. Beyond the lapse, another part of this high-level conversation has caught our attention. The screenshot on your screen is of a message sent on the Houthi chart group by U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Waltz talks about how European navies do not have the capability to defend against Houthi attacks. The NSA goes on to say that the Yemen's rebel group has sophisticated arsenal that they are now using. In the end, Mike Waltz talks about how America is working on calculating the cost of America's strikes on Houthis and how U.S. President Donald Trump wants European nations to bear the cost. The conversation does not end here. U.S. Homeland Security Advisor and staunch Trump loyalist Stephen Miller agrees that Europe needs to remunerate the U.S. for its cost of warring with Houthis if Washington restores freedom of navigation in key maritime routes. Remember, the Red Sea is one of the world's most critical trade routes, connecting Asia and Europe through the Suez Canal. It handles 12% of the global trade and 40% of all container traffic. However, Houthi rebel attacks on commercial vessels have severely disrupted shipping. Major firms are now avoiding the route, forcing ships to reroute around Africa's Cape of Good Hope. Oil and gas shipments have also been affected. Around 6.2 million barrels of crude oil and petroleum products transit through the route daily. By early 2024, southbound oil flows through the Suez Canal had dropped by half. Liquefied natural gas shipments to Europe also declined, triggering price fluctuations in energy markets. Insurance costs have surged as well. War risk premiums for vessels using the Red Sea rose as high as 2%, adding millions in expenses per voyage. Cargo insurance rates have also spiked, making the Suez route financially unviable for many shipping lines. The conversation between top lawmakers of the Trump administration has once again put the spotlight on a growing wedge between the U.S. and European nations over unequal defense spending. Trump has repeatedly threatened to quit the NATO military alliance over accusations that Washington shoulders most of the military expenditure. James J. Mallow is a foreign and defense analyst, West Asia analyst as well. He's now joining us from London. James, good to see you, and thank you very much for joining us at this hour. How far do you think this whole chart drama or chart scenario is going to go? Because Europe is now being roped in.
Hello, Eric. Well, firstly, let me just say that I wish I was the journalist who was accidentally added to that group chat. I would have had the difficult decision, I'm sure, like Jeffrey Goldberg, as to whether to go public with it and release it, or whether to think like Jeffrey Goldberg did of The Atlantic, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine in the United States, or whether to think perhaps it was a hoax, but actually 2 days later, because he got added, I think it was March 16th, and then the actual planes took off to hit Houthi targets in Yemen on March the 18th. So, of course, he realized it was for truth, and, of course, it was a huge mistake on the part of the United States and quite embarrassing. In terms of how this affects Europe and Britain, and indeed some of the remarks that have been seen now on those screenshots, well, I can tell you that this particular incident came up in Prime Minister's Question Time earlier today at the House of Commons in Westminster, where the third largest party led by Ed Davey. That's the Liberal Democrat Party. And he doesn't particularly like this administration at all in the United States. He doesn't like President Trump. He's open about this, but he can be open because he's the third party and he's not part of the government. And he asked the question, is it right now that Britain should share defense important intelligence with United States? Of course, he was just trying to push the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. And Sir Keir Starmer responded. He actually fumbled a little bit, and he was a little bit wobbled on his feet. But then he said, I don't think this particular statement is neither responsible or serious, and we work with the United States on a daily basis. And he moved on very, very quickly. Look, in terms of defense mechanisms, when Donald Trump first came to power in 2016 and 2020, to 2020, he highlighted a lot of issues. And one of those issues was that NATO was clearly a defense mechanism to prevent Russia from perhaps attacking. Now, the United States is nowhere near Europe, of course, although their borders are just a few miles apart if you go right up to the North Pole. But the United States has rightly outlined that some European countries are not paying their fair share. And I think it's right for the United States to do that, and hence that's why we saw some of these messages. Now, President Trump makes it very clear, Poland has stepped up to the plate, very much so. So has Britain. There are other countries who have not, namely Spain, Portugal, Italy, and other smaller countries in the EU that have not paid their way. And it's right that President Trump says, after 70 years, it's wrong for the United States to keep picking up the bill. And we should not be paying for you. You should be looking after yourselves, unless you're going to contribute your GDP as other countries are doing.
Okay.
Now, just today, the Chancellor in the United Kingdom announced that Britain's GDP is going to go up to 2.5%. Poland are heading towards much more than that. Latvia is looking to 5%. And now the European countries suddenly realize, well, their defense is perhaps under scrutiny right now, and they need to raise more money to defend their own borders.
Mr. Mallow, just very quickly, now we're talking about responsibilities or taking responsibilities. There's several officials who have said that there was nothing classified that was discussed during the chat, in that chat group. If Donald Trump is to take responsibility, how should he do it? How should he, pacify the situation as it is? Very quickly.
I think President Trump is going to hope that another major story is going to take place in the next couple of days, and therefore, like most stories, this suddenly gets wiped under the carpet. It's up to the American media if they decide to focus on this, and the Democrat Party are obviously realize that they've got some ammunition now against this particular administration. Is President Trump going to fire one of his, or perhaps the defense minister or somebody else in those 18 people chat group that I was not part of, but Jeffrey Goldberg was? We'll have to wait and see. I have a feeling he probably will not, but he'll put them on warning. And if something else happens in the foreseeable future, he may therefore replace that particular person. But I've got a feeling nothing is going to change at this point.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Mr. James Mallow, good to see you. Thank you very much for your insights today. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.